Hi, it's Mike again. What we're going to do today is we're going to do a picture which has got some trees in, a sky, a wood in the background and a meadow or a field, grassy field in the front. The sky is going to be slightly different from the skies we've done before, and we'll get into a slightly different technique of doing them. We're going to make some simple trees which will be very effective, and they won't be too difficult for you to grasp how to do them. And then we're going to do some trees on the horizon, like a wood, and that's very similar to the outline that we did when we did the mountains and the hills in the foreground in the last lesson. Now for this today, you're going to need a flat brush, about 3/4. You're going to need a number 3 brush, and you're going to need your little scratch card. And then that's all we're going to need, and then we can get going. Okay? Right. Get your paper down on the paper, and then we'll be ready to start. Our ruler, and we're going to pencil, and what we're just going to do is to run a little line across here. So we've got a horizon, that's where the horizon is going to be. So this will be our sky, and what I'm going to do here is we're going to use right, first of all we're going to put some water on, but we're not going to put it all over. We're just going to dab it in various places, so some of it is dry and some of it is wet. And we just do that again, a little bit here and there, and now, and we're going to mix up some yellow. And what I'm going to use is I'm using either yellow ochre, or you can use raw sienna. And we're just going to put a bit of that in. Some of it is going to go on the white, and some of it's going in the dry, and some of it's going where it's a bit wet. And we put that on. Now we're going to put some blue in on there as well. And you see what will happen, some of it where it's dry will form a hard line, and some of it where it's not won't. Perhaps just run that across there like that. And that gives us a very different sky to the one we've had before. Now I'm going to let that dry off. And then we'll put another little part in. Right. Now you can get on with that and do that, and then we'll come back. Right, that's dry now. And what we're going to do is we're going to mix up a little green, and we're going to make it a little bluey green. So mix some yellow and some blue together. And what we're going to do with that is we're going to just run that along the horizon here. And if you keep the bottom line there and just put something like that. And then we're going to drop a little bit of blue into that in places. And perhaps just mix a little green with that, so it's slightly darker green, that's it. And what we've now got is on the horizon we've got a tree line. We can make it a little bit darker here, and just run that along there like that. And if we just let that run back, and as that dries a little bit, we drop some more colours in there. And then we should end up with what looks rather like a nice set of trees on the horizon. I think that's probably starting to get a little, yep. So we can put a little bit more green in there now, which is darker green. Just drop it in and just let it run. And while we're at this, we can get our thirsty brush, nice clean brush, take the thing out, and we just run it along that bottom there. That's it. Now I'm going to let that dry a little bit until the shine starts to come off it, and then we'll just do a little bit more colour into that. In fact, I'm going to let that dry off completely, and then we'll put something in there. Well, that's almost dry now. So what we're going to do is just put some other layers on here. There we are. You'll see how effective blue is when you put it into this. It makes it look as if you've got layers of the different trees going through. Now, I think we're almost there now. So that can dry off, and when it's dried off, you can mix up, now that's dry, we're going to mix up a little bit of brown and a tiny bit of blue with it, so it's more brown than it is that, and we're just going to touch it into the bottom here. It just gives us a bit of depth in there. Right. When that's finished, we're going to practice our trees. I'm going to dry that off, and that gives you a nice little horizon line with some trees in, which can fill in the background. Right, we're dry now, I think. Yep, that's it. Now, we're now going to do some trees. Now, what we're going to do with the trees is, again, we need some paint. So I would use something like lemon yellow and then a touch of ultramarine. That gives us a nice, but make it more yellow than the green, than the blue. Right, now what we're going to do now is we're just going to put it in the brush, and we're going to make some little marks in the shape of a tree. But we don't need to block it all in, we need gaps in it all. Perhaps a little bit up there, put some down here, and then down through the middle here. We can darken these in afterwards, and then some down to here, and then we're going to do some more over this one. So we do another one here, we've got our green paint, but leave some, as I say, leave some gaps between the splodges. Some of them you can join up, but by and large we need to keep them that way. I'm just going to prop this up a minute. That's it. Right. So we've got that, and we're going to let that dry. Now these are spring trees because they're green. Now what we're also going to do is we can do one which looks like the autumn, and because this is only a practice. So if you get some yellow and some red and make a nice orange like you do with the autumn leaves, and then we can put an orange one in the middle here for the autumn. And we're going to let that dry off now. You can actually let one or two of these perhaps drift into one. That's it, a bit over there. While these are still wet, you can drop some other colours in. I'm just dropping a little bit of red into this one. And on the other green ones, you can drop a darker green into them just to see what that does, because that will give you some idea of the dark foliage in the trees where the shadows are. Right, now we are going to let these dry off this time. Right, so that's dry now, and I hope you've all got some nice little splodges of colour in there like I've got. Now what we're going to do now is we're going to take one of our little brushes, probably a number 3, which looks a bit like that. I'd like you to mix up some brown paint. And just put a tiny little splash of blue in it, so we've got a nice dark colour. And what we're going to do now is we'll start with this one, and we're going to make it into a tree. So we'll start with the trunk at the bottom, and then we're going to go up through here. Got another branch coming out there, and one coming out that way. Then we get up to here, we'll have one there, one going into there, and one there. And there you are, you can start to see a tree. Right, we'll now tackle the one with the autumn leaves on. So we get our brown paint, and off we go again. We have a little trunk down here, and this one can have a bit of a branch that comes out that way and then disappears off up there. And we'll have a nice up through the middle there. As we do, we just fill these in very gently and get the sort of shape of the tree going through. And you sometimes see the odd branch through the leaves, and that's that one. And that finally leaves this one on this side. So we're just down here again. And that one can just pull these little things, and remember that the branches get smaller and smaller as they get further up the tree. And we just have a little tiny bit there, and there's another one for you. So that is what these will look like, and there we are. So we've now got a nice little sky, we've got some woods in the background, and we've got some nice trees. Right, we're going to resume now and do the bottom part of the picture. And for the eagle-eyed amongst you, you may notice that this is not quite the same as the one we finished with just now. And the reason for that was that I went through the lesson to finish it off, but I forgot to switch the camera on, so I've had to do another little picture here. But anyway, not to worry, let's get on with it and do it. So we've now got to fill this bottom part in, and we're going to do some yellow across the page, and here we go. And I'm using in this one raw sienna, and we just put that across there very gently, and just a little splash more in there, and we're going to let that dry. Right, I'm just going to put the hairdryer on this and dry this off, and then we'll move on to the next stage. Right, that's dry now, and I'm just going to get, again, a little damp brush, and I'm just going to run that in a diagonal from this corner to this corner. That's it. Now, we're going to get some brown and some reddish brown on this. It's called raw sienna, and I'm just going to run that from this corner here right the way up like that. And then with a little damp brush, we're just going to pull this down into the bottom here like that. And once we get that going, I'm just going to dry that off now. Right, with that dry, we're going to put some little, we need one of your smaller brushes, number 3, that looks something like that. And with the same colour brown, perhaps just put a splash of blue into it. We're going to do some little fence posts up here. And we're going to run a fence down this line here. And what you'll notice is that the posts get closer and smaller as we go down the field. And you can do a little practice on this, but what we need to do next is to put some little wires into the fence posts as well. If you practice on a little old piece of paper, just to see how quickly you can get your brush to do very tiny thin wires like this. Just practice, just skim the surface of the paper, and after a while you'll be able to pick up some. So then we've got to do some there we go. And what we just touch these posts up is to make your brown a little darker by putting some blue into it and just running it down one side of these posts. Now we're back now to making a little bit of green again. So with our brush we need to get some yellow and blue and make a nice green up. And then we're just going to touch that lightly around the bottom of these posts here. And just for good measure, we can put a little bit on the side, using the side of the brush. And then we'll make a nice one down here. And we'll darken that up again. Just going to dab that in there again to make that a little darker. And what you can use is you can use your card and just scratch a few of these sort of upwards so you've got some indication of grass growing up. And then just to finally finish it off, back to some brown again. Quite dark brown, and we're just going to tap that into the bottom there. And that's quite a nice little picture, which is all finished. Right, just to finish off with, let's take the tape off, and we'll just pull that away, and we'll pull this one away. this one, and finally the one at the top. And that's given us quite a nice little picture. So what we now need to do is just do a little recap. And if you remember what we did, we took some water and we dabbled water in different areas of the sky and dropped the yellow in, and then we dropped the blue in. And where we had hard and soft edges, which is what happens when you don't paint the whole lot with water, then we ended up with a different type of cloud pattern from the one that we had when we were doing washes in the previous lessons. Once we'd done that and let it dry, we then put our tree line in, and that was a couple of layers of starting with a very light green and then darken it as it comes forward and dropping colours in. Once we'd done that and let that dried, we then did our trees, and these were done by putting dabbles of green paint, which we again darkened up by dropping darker colours into them, but leaving space between the blobs as you would in the structure of a tree. We did an autumn one and two spring ones, and then we took our number 3 brush and we outlined between these gaps what looks like tree trunks and branches. Quite effective, and it does come out very well. We finished that off, and then we put a wash across the bottom here, waited till that dried, and then we took a damp brush, not soaking wet but damp, and ran it diagonally up here. And then while that was still damp, we took some brown, in this case it was burnt sienna, and ran that right up there along that line, so it was hard where it's dry and it just softly merges in. And then we put a damp brush down here just to merge it into the yellow. Once that was finished, we put our fence posts in, and remember, as the fence post gets further away into the distance, so they get shorter in gaps, sizes, and they get shorter in their height, and that's the perspective it disappearing in the distance. Did a little practice on putting lines across with a brush, little dabble of green, some earthy bits in the front here and some grass, and indeed now you'll practice at doing little lines. I'm sure you can actually come up here and do 1 or 2 little things like this and get some little plants growing in there. But anyway, that was it. So it's quite a nice little picture. You've got lots of things to practice there. So you carry on, crack on, and we'll see you again next time. Enjoy your painting. Bye.